ਸਸਕੈਚੁਅਨ ਪਹੁੰਚੇ ਐਨਡੀਪੀ ਪ੍ਰਧਾਨ ਸਰਦਾਰ ਜਗਮੀਤ ਸਿੰਘ ਵੱਲੋਂ ਕਤਲ ਕੀਤੇ ਗਏ ਮੂਲ ਨਿਵਾਸੀ ਬੱਚਿਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਸ਼ਰਧਾਂਜਲੀ ਦਿੱਤੀ ਗਈ। ਜਗਮੀਤ ਸਿੰਘ ਨੇ ਇਸ ਗੱਲ ਉੱਤੇ ਕਾਫੀ ਜ਼ੋਰ ਦਿੱਤਾ ਕਿ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਬੱਚਿਆਂ ਲਈ ਇਨਸਾਫ ਦੀ ਲੜਾਈ ਅੱਗੇ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਜਾਣਗੇ। ਇਸ ਮੌਕੇ ਉਹ ਕਈ ਵਾਰ ਭਾਵੁਕ ਵੀ ਨਜ਼ਰ ਆਏ ਤੇ ਨਾਲ ਹੀ ਇੱਕ ਪੱਤਰਕਾਰ ਵੱਲੋਂ ਪੁੱਛੇ ਗਏ ਇੱਕ ਸਵਾਲ ਦੇ ਜਵਾਬ ਵਿੱਚ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਖੁਦ ਨੂੰ ਪ੍ਰਧਾਨ ਮੰਤਰੀ ਜਸਟਿਨ ਟਰੂਡੋ ਨਾਲੋਂ ਕਾਫੀ ਵੱਖ ਦੱਸਿਆ।
One thing we've got to acknowledge is that that legacy of injustice is ongoing. It didn't stop with the residential institutions. To this day, right now, the Canadian government was found to have recklessly and willfully discriminated against Indigenous children in the Indigenous child welfare system. That is a very harsh finding by the Canadian Human Rights Tribunal, that they were willfully and recklessly discriminated against. Despite that finding, Justin Trudeau is fighting these kids in court. He is fighting them in court. There is no way that on one hand, Justin Trudeau can claim to walk the path of reconciliation if he is fighting Indigenous kids in court. A New Democrat government, me as Prime Minister, I would immediately stop that fight against Indigenous kids. I would immediately implement the ruling of the Canadian Human Rights Tribunal. We would ensure that every community in this country had clean drinking water. We would respect Indigenous communities as nations and work with them with the spirit of the United Nations Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous People, with true nation-to-nation relationships. We would walk the path of reconciliation. There is no excuse that in the 21st century, with a G7 nation, that Indigenous communities still don't have clean drinking water. There is no excuse that I buy that makes any sense whatsoever. That's what we would do differently. We would walk the path with real conviction and real justice in our hearts.
Mr. Singh, Michael Couture from Global National. With all due respect, these are some of the same things that Justin Trudeau said in 2015 when he was fighting against Stephen Harper. So why should communities believe you if, as you say, Justin Trudeau let them down? How are you not going to let them down, besides saying political will? Because everybody will say, hey, I'm going to get it done. But once they get into power, they realize it's tough to govern.
One, I'm not Justin Trudeau. I'm not like him. I've lived a different life. And I've felt some of the pain of what it's like to be considered less than. I understand the pain of being someone that's not valued, not worth anything. And Indigenous people have been made to feel that way for so long. Maybe other politicians don't care. Maybe it's not important to them. Maybe they've never experienced what it's like to be considered less worthy just because of the way you look. I know a little bit what that's like. And I promise you, I'll be different.